Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 75 of Everything Teams Phone Live. We have an action-packed episode today. Lots of demoing, not a lot of talking. Well, there'll be some talking, but not a lot of sort of fluff around this. We're getting to some hard-hitting, let's show you what stuff looks like show. This is the one you want to watch. Brandon, how's your day today?
Well, it's Friday. Let's say that. It's Friday. Obviously, in the green room, I got out my Microsoft challenge frustrations around my computer. I think we're good now, so it's a good day to be.
You were telling us how great it was.
That's right.
Love it.
That's right. That's right. It's amazing. All right, we've got two special guests with us today. Bailey, we have some amazing guests with us, and they're guests, but we kind of see them every day these days, right? We've got some MVPs, the Microsoft MVPs joining us, but they're momentum guys. It's fantastic. So that's right. That's right. So Mark Vale and Satish Budayal, welcome to the show.
Thank you again.
I keep telling Mark and Satish, I'm like, it's so great to work with you guys. It's so great to work with you guys. It's like an everyday occurrence now. So I feel like a bit of a fan, like the leader of the fan club for these guys. It's kind of funny. Before we dive in,
I was going to say, we got the two MVPs on here. They're now with momentum. How does it feel to have Rick as your hype man out in front, hyping you guys up all the time? Not to put you on the spot, but
I mean,
it's something you're not used to.
No, it's like your mum going on stage in the front of the school talking about it, isn't it?
That's a good one.
That's exactly what it is. You can do no wrong. You're like, I'm going to say something bad, but it's like you're like baby Jesus, right?
Yeah, that's it.
I love it. Okay, that's fantastic. Your mom going on stage at school saying, here's my kid. I love it. All right. Bailey, this show is go ahead, Steve.
I taught him to do like that.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, Bailey, this show is still sponsored.
Still sponsored.
So what do we have for housekeeping, Bailey?
Well, first off, welcome to the show. Happy Friday, everybody. This podcast is sponsored by Momentum, where we help businesses connect, collaborate, and engage using Microsoft Teams. Now back to our host for episode 75.
Okay.
Thanks, Bailey.
All right, guys. There's a lot to show, and we have to excuse Satish a little bit early today. Satish, where are you at right now?
So I'm in Boston. We have a community days that's happening here, the Collab Days, New England. So I'm in Boston, Burlington, and in just about 30 minutes, I'll be presenting around Microsoft 365 Copilot.
In 30 minutes, so you're on stage in 30 minutes. Like you're giving a class, right? Or you're giving a presentation. What's your presentation on?
It's all about Microsoft 365 Copilot, the features, the functionalities, how to leverage it, licensing, all about M365 Copilot.
All right. How far is it to walk down? You're at the hotel, I assume. So how far is it to walk down to the...
I am at the MTC itself. Yeah, it's not the hotel.
Okay. All right. So we've got you for 30 minutes. So we're going to have you go first today. Like we said on the intro and on the invite, it's demo days. We're going to show some stuff. So Satish, what are you showing us today? You're doing a Copilot thing at Collab Days Live in Boston right now, but what are you showing us here on Everything Teams Phone Live?
So today I'll be talking about how the experience from the telephony perspective would look like for frontline workers, how we can leverage the overall telephony from PSTN standpoint, how the shared calling capability, which Microsoft announced, fits in best for the frontline workers. Microsoft has sold many licenses of frontline workers, but not all of them have been enabled. So how we would be leveraging the capabilities of shared calling, telephony, and how the overall experience for the frontline workers on the web, on their mobile devices, or on their desktop app would look like. So we'll look at all those options as well, and
That's
how we can
fantastic.
customize those experience as well.
So shared calling, that's interesting because not every carrier does shared calling, right? Not every carrier is doing shared calling. So I'm going to ask you to just kind of Well, what is shared calling? And then let's talk about frontline workers. What's frontline workers and what does that mean?
So frontline workers, so let's come first to the frontline worker experience or frontline workers as such. Frontline workers could be workers working in your warehouses. Those licenses that comes at a least cost from Microsoft, and then those experiences would be much more different. They don't use your email services. They don't use Teams meetings or Teams chat that frequently. So the experience for frontline workers is much more different from their licensing standpoint. They have the same SKU of licenses, in like we have it in enterprise E1, E5, and E3. Same, they have it. It has F1, F3, and F5, but the experiences differ. They have more apps that can be pinned in. They can be customized app that can be built upon. All those experiences is much more different. Now, coming to shared calling, so shared calling was one of the most requested features for Microsoft Teams. It was already available in direct routing configurations where you could have one mainline number and then you could provide internal extensions to your users sharing the same mainline number. And when they make outbound call, that allows you to use the same mainline number to display as a caller ID. And when they are using when they are internal and when they are using those extensions, inbound call can come to your main auto attendant, and then using those extensions the internal calls can be routed accordingly.
Brandon, uh, Momentum, we do shared calling, right?
We do. We offer
'Cause not
shared.
all, not every
Yeah.
carrier does it.
I'll tell you one more, our most important reason why most of the operators are hesitant towards enabling shared calling. Shared calling capability with one DID, you can enable up to 10,000 users. So that's the limitation Microsoft has set, that one DID I can share among 10,000 users. But for a carrier, they don't have a visibility whether that same DID is being shared with 100 users or with 1,000 users or 10,000 users. So that's one specific reason that most of the telcos or most of the um, partners are not enabling their infrastructure with shared calling as such.
Because they
Yeah,
don't
and
do a model like we do, right, Brandon? They don't
yeah,
have
our model encourages that. Hey, shared calling is really, at least from our perspective, it's really about those groups that don't really need PSTN access, or they just need light utilization. So we designed our product to be, hey, go do it, but the more you use it, the more you're going to be motivated to start analyzing your organization for dedicated phone number, user seats to address that utilization. So we don't want to design it in a way that org can go get really cheap service and bypass you know a, a well designed phone system, I guess is what I'll say.
And
Mark, do you see utilization for it in Europe? Do people use shared calling a lot in Europe?
Well, it's been around for ages, hasn't it? You think of your traditional PBX phone system, you shared your lines there. You just bought a bunch of channels and you shared them between your extensions. So it's been there forever. I think, even with direct routing, it's shared by default because that's the same model. So I think there's a lot of people using it. It's just bringing it into Microsoft calling plans was the reason why they brought shared calling in, to try and get more people using the Microsoft native plans. Operators are going to have to follow suit, and I think there is a financial thing for operators that they will lose on a per user per month subscription, but they'll still make money in the call minutes and potentially make more money with the call minutes than they would do if they didn't offer it. So
Yeah,
the market wants it. Microsoft certainly wants it because they want to activate as many phone standard licenses as possible.
that's kind of how we use it. It's like, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. That's exactly how we use it. It's almost like a freemium offer. It's not really a freemium offer. You pay for it, but it's usage based only, right? So it's like activate it. Let's see. It's like it's like the candy store. Here's you keep coming back, right?
Yeah, I don't think any customers would really object to being on a separate rate card for shared calling versus guaranteed DDI. So there's
Yeah.
opportunities in the market there to transform. You've just got to change your model.
And interestingly, in North America, 911 is one of the most critical things. So when the users are making those calls, the call should go out. You don't need to have to be compliant by Kerry's laws and Rebams Act. You need to have a DID, even if it's a shared calling based DID. That reduces your cost if you're using a shared calling DID, and if your utilization in your common area space is not that much, you can always use a shared calling. And uh, the better part of shared calling capabilities, you can get started with it, and then if you see, oh, my utilization is increasing on shared calling standpoint, you can switch
Switch
over
over.
to a dedicated DID base as well. So flexibilities are available here as such.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, now let's move to the frontline worker, Satish, because that's really what we're going to talk about, what you're going to show. And I'm interested to hear about, because I know Microsoft has done a really good job of pushing frontline workers in the retail space, even in the healthcare space to some degree, where people are carrying devices, right? So what is a shared calling, or what is the frontline worker, and how does it differ? I know you said it earlier, but give me some real world examples.
So let's go straight into the demo environment
Love
a-
it.
and look at it from right now. We'll look at from the overall user standpoint, how it would look for a regular user. You would see on the left hand side, you would have meetings, you would have chat, although we have chat here as well, but you'll have meetings and other tabs here. For frontline workers, all this can be customized. Shift is one of the most use case for them, where if someone wants to change their shift, they can come in here, check in, managers can approve those changes. All those options are available as well. Loop is one of the component where if you are working on multiple different things in different workspaces together, you can always use loop as one of the component as well. From the loop perspective, one of the app that I haven't added here is your task or your to-do list. Frontline workers, generally when you come into your shift, you'll have a certain task that would have been allocated to you. You can always do all those respective tasks, mark it complete. If you are in a retail space working in any of our warehouses, you validate, oh, the stocks are available, you just check it, take a screenshot of it and add it up into the task. All those things can be done using the Teams app. And to the extent, we can always add up shared calling, where you'll have a call where you'll be able to see your dial pad, you would be able to make outbound call, inbound call, your 911 address would remain the same. All the functionality would work seamlessly in a similar way like you have in or as a regular user, whether you're dialing 933 call or a 911 call, or if you're dialing a regular PSTN user. The only difference would be is when a user receives the call comes into the main IVR, and from there the call comes to the user account as such.
Got
One is that experience. From the admin standpoint, I can come in into the Microsoft Teams admin center and then pin what certain apps that my frontline workers would be using, and then this can be an policy that can be pushed to the users from the
Questions.
admin. Go ahead.
It maybe it's just me. Are we sharing a screen or just? I don't know if it's my end or not
No,
sure
I
if
don't.
you're intending
I
to be
don't see
sharing
a.
a
I
screen.
don't see a screen just yet, Satish. I have a question about that, but I don't see a screen yet. If you're sharing a screen,
I don't know if you were sharing a screen. I'm just asking because I want to make sure our
Okay.
audience can see it. Not to interrupt, just making sure.
No worries. Let me know once you are able to see it now.
Oh,
there we go.
so hold on. There we go. There we
There we
go.
go. There we go. So
Oh,
let me get. Let me leave off where you were just. You were just at. This is great. You had said something about apps. That if you're pushing apps to this user device, now this is the user device. So it's It's definitely like smaller. It's meant to be small. Is that right? It's meant to be on a small screen, a mobile screen, essentially.
That's correct. So that's the major reason why Microsoft gave those flexibility, where you can decide whether which specific apps, even the main functionality of having a Teams meeting on the left hand side, those have been removed. You can remove your activity if you want to. So all those options are here. As an administrator, I can control it because what we have seen is we most of the customers are using handheld devices. Some those have scanners inbuilt into it, so for them having a visibility or view of what apps are being there is really very very small. So that's the reason why you can customize your site trail. Okay, not this one. Okay, so you can customize what apps are pinned here. So one thing that is in terms of shifts, like I was talking about, you can have shifts, predefined shifts into it, loop component. You can have those workspaces created where if you're working with multiple people, you can have those components there, and then you can write those important things. Like I mentioned, one more option is also the Microsoft To Do and the task that can be added up here as well. So whatever task that you would have can be embedded, and if there is any custom apps that you might be using in your frontline worker space, those can be leveraged as well. And
So let
this
me
is, go ahead.
let me ask. So when you say scanners, are you meaning like
The RFID
if I,
scanners.
okay, so if I'm a retail organization, I've got a scanner for inventory. So now I'm Home Depot, let's just say, right? And
Correct.
I've got one device. Instead of having a radio, instead of having a couple of devices, I've got a device that's my mobile device, my phone, my internet for inventory, and then I can go scan to see what we have in inventory, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. So most of the Zebra devices that are coming in, those can be done as well. And then I don't think so. I have that enabled for walkie-talkie, but your walkie-talkie functionalities can also be added up in the same Teams app. So you can connect to the different channels and communicate. All those things can be done from one single app.
Oh, the walkie-talkie feature on top of it, and then having your own app. So basically, a retail organization can consolidate everything that they do into a single organization. Who has Microsoft sold frontline calling to? Like, what do you see more deployed out there?
In all the retail customer bases, we have seen customers have already purchased it. Microsoft has embedded this into their enterprise agreement, so most of the customers have those. It's right now they are just looking at their renewals from the devices standpoint, because earlier Zebra devices were not certified on the Microsoft Teams side. They were running on the old Android devices, which is now certified, and Zebra is also upgrading their overall platform services so that Teams can be a part of their overall portfolio as well.
Oh, that's good. They're is if it's Zebra, though, I'm thinking of they're big in the healthcare space, aren't they? Like,
They are big everywhere. I have seen them in the retail spaces as well. They have been, all the retail giants have those devices.
so if I was comparing, if I was looking for UC services, let's just say, I'm comparing that to just your standard DECT or something like that. This is just it completely blows it out of the water, then, right? I mean, if I, because I've got mobile not just tied to the to the region or to the location, but I've got full mobility. I've got full walkie-talkie. I've got full scanning capabilities. I got full just everything on one device.
Yep, all on one device. In some customer bases, I've even seen that they have placed two iPhones uh, that are placed at the front of the desk. That is being used. They have some customers have used iPads as an option as well, just for their frontline workers. They have kept it so that they can use it from the telephony perspective. They can use it for chat and any of those communications as well. So even those are one set of the options that are also available for the users.
Okay.
And then what? Just maybe to wrap this piece up, one of the interesting features I saw coming was around the shifts component, where you can have shifts, and now Microsoft is going to start allowing admins to make the decision that, hey, you can access your frontline environment only during your shift, so that way, maybe it's a bring your own device, maybe it's just, compliance reasons. You can now take that frontline worker and say, you're only allowed to log in and use this service in your scheduled shift, which I think is really interesting.
Not only that, one, only when you are within your regular shift. Second option that is also coming in, and that's in the roadmap, that I can tell you, is location based. Once you are outside your office premises, your services would be reduced. You would not be able to make like a PSTN calls. Those kind of capabilities are also coming in. So once you're outside your office network, or once you're outside of your office, that can be restricted. So more like a work life balance into the overall services as such.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I know, without going into a lot of details, I know of organizations that have been sued over labor violations because workers are asked a question outside of their shift, and they access a system to answer the question, and obviously over time that's led to lawsuits. So I think there's value to those features.
Brandon, you can't have one. You can't have one, Brandon. You're going to have to be called after hours. I'm sorry. Just how
I'm
it
getting
works.
set up on shifts, so I'm only available from like 10 to 2.
No, you Brandon would be available 24/7.
Oh, excellent. There we go. All right. Well, that's what else? Go ahead, Satish.
One last thing is Microsoft has recently announced that from the admin center you can also manage contacts. That helps pinning up those contacts here on your right hand side. That would be like if I want to make a call to HR, or if I want to make an emergency call, or my front desk. All those things can be pre-pinned on the right hand side from the contact standpoint.
Is shifts only on frontline workers, or is shifts on everything?
Shifts are on everything, but predominantly the usage of shifts is in the frontline worker space, more compared to any other workspaces.
Got it. I was almost thinking, it's almost like a workforce management tool, right? I mean, it looks like it is like a real. I mean, it's workforce management, just not in a
In-
call center environment, but in a frontline worker environment.
Correct. And initially, the Shifts application which Microsoft released out was really with low feature functionalities. Now they are expanding up to various shift management tools as well, so that you can integrate it with third-party shift management tool that you might be already using it. And then once your subscriptions are up for renewal, you can shift everything to this app as such.
So let me ask you a question. And I know we know the numbers behind the scenes, Satish, roughly, but there's we call this this white space, right? So you've got people with E5 licenses that have phone enabled, but they're not using PSTN. What's the opportunity, you think, in the frontline space, where you've got people that have bought the frontline workers, but maybe haven't enabled a telephone on that? Is that a big opportunity?
It's a big opportunity because Microsoft has bundled in those licenses with their enterprise agreements. So they have sold it. It's more around the adoption around this needs to happen. Roughly around 10 million of licenses have been sold for frontline workers, is what I know of. Uh, and It's just that it's a complete white space for any partner who wants to get into it and get started with those customers as such, whether it is in retail workspaces or in your healthcare workforce as well. Functionality remains the same.
And let me just, Satish, you're an expert in frontline workers, and we're delivering that here at Momentum, right? I mean, that's essentially one of the services we deliver along with our shared calling opportunity. So that's so for those of you listening that are partners, don't worry, we've got it all covered. The market can be all delivered by Momentum. We're good. Not to plug us very hard there, but every now and then you got to plug Momentum. All right, very good, Satish. Thank you very much. I know you got to run. you are welcome to hop off whenever you'd like. Thank you for being part of the episode. Frontline workers and shared calling, two things that organizations that have a lot of scale can take advantage of.
Absolutely.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Satish. All right, Brandon, we've got some more demos rolling here, huh?
We got some more demos. I know, the sad news is, back to the green room comment when the show first started, I was going to give a sneak peek of the new CQD Power BI desktop dashboard for kind of the intelligent quality metrics. Unfortunately, my computer got stuck in a firmware update, and I had to turn to my trusty Linux desktop. So all you Microsoft people, sorry, I'm on Linux. And I prefer Linux.
I can't believe
Dare
you
I
said
say
that.
that?
I can't believe you said that on the show. Anyway,
Dare I say it? And I want to see the comments that come out of that, because it's a debate. But I do have the Teams desktop client on my Linux desktop, so we can certainly show things like our fax application, texting. I know Mark can probably go into the call queues app that's in public preview. I can't because the Teams desktop doesn't support public preview. But I think between those three things, we can probably wrap a lot of content into the rest of it.
Let's do this, because I think I'd like to, Mark, you wrote, let's talk about this for just a minute. Mark wrote some lines of code. Okay. It's like, he started out with about 30 is what he started out with, is what he told me. And now I think it's grown. But Mark, you created a little sort of a screen pop application. And let me back up. I want to take, if you could delete the word little, because I don't mean to devalue it by calling it little. So you wrote an application that is a screen pop built into Teams. And let's talk about what was behind that. I mean, for what purpose? I mean, a screen pop, you see that with CRMs and organizations, pop up Salesforce, pop up whatever. What was behind sort of writing an integrated screen pop with caller information? What was your idea behind that?
Have you seen the price of Salesforce lately?
Oh, done. There you go. I have. So interesting comment about that, because Brandon and I commented on your LinkedIn post about, I see this as a great opportunity for organizations to view and collect their data, but actually make decisions around it. And not everyone has a screen pop. Like, I don't have a screen pop on my number, right? I don't see it. I don't have a pop up Salesforce that we use, but it's interesting because a lot of organizations that are maybe at reception or whatever, maybe don't use screen pops. I see it for customer care, and you see it in those organizations, but you don't see it, just kind of normal out and about, normal business, seeing a screen pop. But I think it'd be helpful.
Yeah,
I think it'd be interesting.
I mean, there's no real backstory as such, but I was just having a bit of a play with out of the possible, really, what you can do within what you're already paying for within Microsoft. And we already have the CDR data in Teams. We already have access to SharePoint, which, if you dumb it straight back down, it's a ready-made database to a degree. So you've got storage there. So why not put the two together and see what we can come up with? And it was a case of, like you said, not everybody's going to subscribe to Salesforce or Fresh Sales or whatever CRM function you choose. There's going to be small businesses out there, plumbers, electricians, even useful to the people who service my garden lawnmower once a year, to be able to have contextual updates about a particular caller customer that's calling in, having notes to be able just to scan through to say, well, this caller, this customer's had this order, had this problem several times. It just helps with that initial conversation. You can approach the call in a particular way, give it the right respect and degree of empathy that's needed straight off the bat and you're on the front foot as well. You're not taking the back foot on calls where the customer might have, rightly or wrongly, the upper hand. So that's where it came from. It's just a case of, like, could we create a basic call notes / light CRM that complements the team's experience. For some receptionists, maybe not so much sales really, but it's more the case of like the front of house reception, or people who just have that multi-role job. So they could just be picking the call up on behalf of someone. They've got that context there, and it's free data essentially, So decided to see what it could be done with. I think it's about 200 lines of code at the minute. It's not big. It's not a product that we should sell in its current form. Just putting that out there, Rick.
Well, there's a university I've already talked to about it, because it's like they don't pay for Salesforce, but they'd love to see their caller data.
What I was going to say, what I appreciate about this, and I don't know if you're going to demo this. Hopefully you do. But if not, we can put the link to your.
No, he's demoing. He's demoing. This is the demo day.
But what I appreciate about it is it goes back to the again, like you were saying, Mark. You've got this system. You've got a phone system, and it's heavily integrated into the larger Microsoft suite of services. And I think as we're talking to people out in the marketplace, it's connecting that dot of the world of imagination is there. It's already there. It's now connecting those things together to make, business process happen without maybe needing to spend a ton of money on third-party components. And I was talking to Rick the other day about this thing that you've created that you're going to show about. It could even be such a simple thing for, say, these smaller salon studios that, someone calls in and they don't need to spend a ton of money on a scheduling service, right? You could just literally leverage what you're going to demo and a little Power Automate to sync it to an Outlook calendar. And all of a sudden you've got a pretty tight little robust tool to handle and record the call logs as they're coming in, the screen pop piece, and then pushing that off scheduling wise into an Outlook calendar for the scheduling components to manage your customers.
Yeah,
Mark, it's never enough, Mark. It's never enough, right? Like you write this thing and it just takes on a form of its own and snowballs.
But if you break it down, right? So like Teams, I think has a limit of 90 days of CDR logs before it goes into garbage collection, and they've gone forever. You've got countries like India and what have you that have regulations to say that you need to keep CDRs for a year, so we can make sure that you're compliant. Out of the box, Teams doesn't have that, but you could just offload those CDRs to your SharePoint and keep them for as long as you're paying for storage. So, you don't have to go out and buy a CDR platform or deploy a Radius server for CDR logs to rip them off your SBC. You can just take them straight out of Teams and dump them into SharePoint, and you've got that audit log there as well. So there's that.
Love it.
You can do that. Be interesting to see what you could layer on top in terms of training Copilot on it. See trends between callers, what the common questions are, what the common notes are, to identify potential improvements in process or training. If a customer's asking the same question, or multiple customers are asking broadly the same question, wouldn't you like that correlation of data to be able to make business decisions? And it could be, from a sales perspective, you could have a bunch of people asking broadly for a product that you don't sell, and that could be a signal to say that actually maybe we should look into selling that product because we got multiple customers asking for it, but we just couldn't tie it all together before then.
Interesting. So Mark, well, I'd love for you to show us what we're talking about, because we're on LinkedIn, so we've seen it and all that good stuff. But I'd love for you to get ready. While you do that, I'm going to talk about just briefly, Brandon. You and I had this discussion earlier on how organizations' data is like is essentially like their gold, right? Like their data hasn't been collected in all the modalities that organizations communicate in, right? It hasn't. And now we've got the capabilities in, say, Copilot. We've got the capabilities now to start to train and start to learn on the data that's actually going on, so we can make those smart business decisions around support, around service, around inventory, around scheduling, around a lot of different things. And capturing the data and being able to visualize it is just part of, kind of part of that journey. And so, Mark, what you've created here, to me, I look at it and go, it's a way for an organization to capture a modality that's not typically captured. Now, you have CDRs, but you don't really make decisions around CDRs, right? And so this is what's really cool. Let's take a look and see what that looks like, and we'll add your screen share here and go.
Yeah, no problem. We share
Okay, so there you go.
Yeah. Cool. So in the Teams Admin Center, this is where you can get your CDR reports. If you in Teams Admin, you'll know this. You can export them to CSV if you want to, but like you mentioned, they're pretty useless for data intelligence on their own. You can pivot them and what have you in Excel to do cost analysis and what have you. But how do we use this data and enrich it? So what I've done is just create a little script that subscribes to the call records endpoint and pulls out any new calls to the tenant that have been made, and then store that into SharePoint, which is over here. Let me go into my little mini CRM. So all I've done at the moment, just to proof of concept, is create 3 SharePoint lists, which is essentially a posh Excel table. And this is where the CDR logs are getting stored. You've got the basic information of call start, end, call ID for if you need to trace a call through, any SIP traces that you might need to, call duration, who the caller was, the direction of the call that was in, who actually took the call on the team side, or who made the call on the team side. We've got in and out calls here, and their UPN, so that we can send like a direct chat to them afterwards. And then the other list is just a very basic one. You can extrapolate this one out, but you create the caller name, the name of the record, the account, the number they're calling from. You can go and do address, your email address, all that type of stuff in here if you wanted to, and expose that type of thing. And then you've got the CDR notes. So sorry, the call notes that you add when you answer a call. There's a few funny ones in there because I was just having a bit of fun with the demos. So essentially 3 lists, but you can build these lists out as much as you want, to your needs. So you can go wild and bring in other stuff like orders and all that type of thing. And then in the Teams calling policy, what you need to do is configure your URL pop. So I have one here. I think it's this one, all the way down in the pop. It's just my domain. I created a little PHP script that's going to take in the phone number that Teams passes it, and then it's going to go and pull all the information from the SharePoint lists that I've shown before, and then present that to the agent when they answer the call. So if I make a call into here, hopefully the demo gods will be on my side.
Trust me, Mark. I've done plenty of everything Teams Phone Line live demos where I'm like, well, I guess not.
Yeah,
So
well,
not
we'll
alone.
see. So make a call, I'm going to answer the call. I'm going to drop the call now because it's costing me money. Straight in, pops it up, tells me who the number belongs to, who it is, what notes were left and by who. I can add a note in to say, and then I can have a sentiment. I can ask whatever questions I want. This could be like a call disposition code type write back. Build this out. This will just pull your login name from Teams, but I just was too lazy to build that in time for this. You can save the note. That'll then go and update the SharePoint list. And now I've got a new note against that call that the next person who takes a call from me will see. And you'll see the call records that this person has made in the past.
So is this your browser? Is this your browser, Mark, or is this in Teams in the Teams client? Where's the screen pop?
This is just in the browser. Unfortunately, it would be nice if there was a way to deep link and pop a side-loaded app in Teams. That would be pretty cool and a bit more sort of intuitive to the users. But we don't have that capability in Teams right now, so it's just going to be a URL pop.
Okay.
So that's essentially you can build this out to your heart's content based on your own requirements. It's not too difficult to do. And it's quite responsive as well. All this is doing is just leveraging the Graph API from Microsoft. Like there's no database. Yes, there's a web server in between that's running, a bit of code and presenting the data to you, but there's no heavy lifting required. And then let's say
that's pretty fast. That was really fast. Is that why? Because it's a light, agile. It's boom. It's here you go. Because that was really quick for a screen pop.
Yeah, we're not pulling massive amount. In this demo, we're not pulling massive amounts of data. So it's literally, just get me this particular piece of data for this particular record, and Graph API is pretty responsive, so it's fairly rapid. But obviously the screen pop is useful if you already know the customer that's calling. If you don't know the customer's calling, I can't call because I don't have multiple numbers. But let's just say this caller came in and it's an unknown number. So you can go further and say, well, actually, there's no notes, there's no call history because they've never called before. So it's a brand new customer. You can put in a new customer record and create it in the fly with my note. And then as soon as you add that, next time that Bailey calls, everyone's going to know that this number belongs to Bailey and these are the notes that are associated. So the only thing that we don't have is real-time call history. So because the Teams Graph API endpoint for call records has an SLA of 30 minutes post-call before it notifies the subscription to say that there's been one made. So there is work to do. If you wanted to attach a note to a particular call, that would have to be kind of like assumed logic, or maybe approached in a different way where it's creating like the baseline CDR for it in the SharePoint database, for instance, and then backfilling that record with the call data when it receives it from Teams. But you could build a robust CRM on nothing more than SharePoint and a few lines of code, and it's cost you practically nothing other than time to put that together, because you're already paying for SharePoint, you're already paying for Teams, the data's there, you've just not been able to use it until now. So I'm
going to ask you, what's the requirements from a implementation perspective? Like, what does that look like? How hard is this to plug in?
Straightforward. You just create an app registration in your Enter ID, give it consent the permissions to the call records API for read permission, and then consent to the read write permission for a SharePoint, so that you can read and write into your SharePoint list. Is literally 2 permissions to grant. That all can be, if this was built out as a distributable product, that could all be automated to deploy and build with just signing in with your credentials, and away you go. So you could, if this was productized beyond here to serve a market, then the deployment of it could be seconds, and you could be using it.
I'm laughing because I'm like, this is fantastic. It is. I do see a lot of use cases for this because, again, collecting your own data, being able to utilize your own data, and it doesn't cost you anything extra. Like being able to put this together and show that to an organization and provide, I think it provides significant value for those heavy phone organizations. I think municipalities, Brandon, what do you think? Like municipalities and universities and schools that don't really operate. Think about the teachers out there or the different departments that don't operate with a CRM or live in a CRM. But boy, seeing who's calling again, if it's the same nuisance caller or if it's the same caller that, they need help with this, I think that's pretty cool using your own data.
Yeah, I mean, there's a million use cases, and I think it ultimately goes back to what Mark lightheartedly, but in probably all seriousness said. The cost of some of these CRMs is really expensive. It's just like what we hear in the contact center space, right? You have businesses who go, I don't want to pay that price tag for the amount of utilization I'm actually leveraging. And this is where these use cases come in and could be really handy. And, Mark talking about the ease of deployment, he talked about that little web server that's sitting in between that's doing I'll call it the scripting, but the code that brings the logic together. You could then deploy that in your own Azure environment if you wanted to self-host it, and it all is inside of your Microsoft environment. You could even do serverless, which we won't get into, but you could literally make this thing so turnkey that just organizations don't even have to think about it other than click a deploy button. So yeah,
Could you do more with the data now? So let's say you want to take this data, you want to take some information and go do something with it. Is there tools inside Microsoft? I mean, Power Automate we talk about all the time. It's a tool that you can take some of that data and go do something else with it, right?
Yeah,
some other business process.
Yeah, it goes back to the calendar comment I made. You could shift it off to a calendar for scheduling. Sorry, Mark, you were gonna.
No, I was going to chime in with the same thing. You can build your own world to your own requirements. You just need to know what your end goal is. There is some will say negative, or it's not really negative, but it's more of a point that you need to be aware of, is that you can go and build all these processes in Power Automate and in Azure Function apps and in runbooks, and make it completely as seamless as possible for your business, as long as you invest in the knowledge in your business to users and transfer that, because people will leave natural progression of careers and what have you. And if they have had the main knowledge of what they've done and they're the only person in that business who has done that, and they leave, the business is left exposed, because if that ever breaks, no one's going to be able to pick that up to be able to fix it in a short space of time. So there is that consideration as well, which is where either a customer would either buy something that's off the shelf and pay a premium for that, or whether they would come to an implementation partner to help support that, and give them that kind of backstop comfort blanket.
Oh yeah, no, they're coming to us, Mark. I've already productized it, packaged it, put a SKU on it. We're off and running. The university just called on this other phone. They're good to go.
Yeah, so, as long as I'm getting shares from it, I don't mind.
All right. I love that. That was awesome, Mark. I think that's great. I'd love to hear if there's any more plans for it down the road, because I think there's a lot that can be done with that. And it's fun to see applications being built. Speaking of applications, Brandon, you've got a patent pending application. Can you show what that is? What is the patent pending application that is the Momentum?
Yeah, we've got what we're calling Teams Fax. It's our, as you said, patent pending, HIPAA compliant fax solution that brings kind of just I call it a modern workflow to traditional fax, right? Today, the industry has been used to traditional fax to a fax machine, or the email fax, where I get an electronic copy emailed to me. So what we've done is we've decided to take that a step further and develop, much like what Mark just showed with the kind of the enterprise application in Azure, creating this Teams application that ties deeply into SharePoint. Again, back to, hey, you're already paying for this data storage. You're already paying for maybe the compliance that's hooked to that data storage. Let's now leverage that and build an application that now just takes that fax, instead of sending it to email or to a physical fax machine, let's send it into your compliant secure storage in SharePoint, and then allow you to hook your compliance tools or your workflow tools to it to sort and shift that fax off to things like CRMs. So let me see if I can find my screen share here. See, share screen. I'm going to have to make a guess on which screen I'm sharing. Let's see. I'll go with this one and go. Let me know if you see my screen. I think I see it.
Yeah.
So we're looking at this is the user desktop client for Teams. We've designed our fax application to be like any other application that you would normally add to your organization. So we've got the fax app, much like the texting app, much like any other app that you would be familiar with. And we've designed this in two ways. One is to be end user for the smaller entities that maybe they don't want to leverage a shared fax line where multiple users are accessing it. Maybe it's just a one person law office or something that just needs a fax line. What we do there is we allow a little bit of flexibility around in the settings after we've set up that fax account. They can pick, do they want to send it to a SharePoint or a OneDrive folder? OneDrive ultimately being SharePoint under the hood, and then giving them the ability to kind of control their destiny on what SharePoint site they want to send that to, so they can kind of keep track of where their data is at. Once that's been set up, then obviously they're allowed to send and receive faxes. I haven't sent anything on this fax account yet. The other modality that we've created is under what is called Teams. Teams. That's a mouthful. It's always confusing when you're trying to reference Teams. And what that allows someone to do is then create a team that then allows for membership control within the Microsoft environment. I clicked on the wrong thing. Let me go with the manage team. So now what we're doing here is we're controlling, hold on, manage team, members. Sorry, this is a beta view. I'm not used to it. But what we're doing with the Teams team methodology is we're really then creating the fax application to leverage the existing role-based access that already exists in the Microsoft environment. So now if I want to share a fax line, ultimately all I'm doing is allowing some admin to control who's a member of that Teams group or the Teams team and the member of that channel, so that they can then access the application. So if we go back out to the general, you'll see there's this new tab. To install it, you're just going to create a new tab and you're going to add the application. Once you've added it, and we meaning Momentum have authenticated and authorized that fax account, then that tab functions just like the main fax app that's pinned out on your single user view. In this environment, this is the compliant environment. This is where we're leveraging the existing components of the Teams ecosystem. So when you create a Teams group and in that channel, it automatically creates a SharePoint site for it. So what we're doing is when you install the fax app, we're detecting that team and how it's set up, and we're locking it to that storage. So in other words, we're pretty much saying, hey, company, if you need compliance and you don't want users to choose where that fax gets stored, it's now controlled by the admin of the organization that has control over that group or over that Teams channel.
Just to break it down, I think of that as HR, right? Like, so let's say I've got a group of HR people, and I just go, okay, here's there's my 10 people in HR. I put them in a team, and that's the fax machine for HR. Is that kind of like the concept, right?
Yep, that is the concept. It could be HR for one. It could be billing for the next. So yeah, again, leveraging Microsoft to organize who has access to that. So we've just shifted most of the fax administration, almost all of it, back into Microsoft. So now it's Microsoft and its compliance tools doing the heavy lifting instead of Momentum doing anything with that data or trying to create partitions on behalf of the customer. And that's one of the big advantages of this application is when we send a fax in. So I'm gonna see how fast this works. I'm sending a fax off of a machine here sitting next to me. You can't see it. There should be a fax. Oh, look, we just got a fax. So under the hood, what's happening is that came off PSTN in through our services, and then connecting to the components that are attached to the customer environment in Microsoft. So when I open this fax, it's actually pulling that file from that designated SharePoint site. This data is not in Momentum's network anymore. It is 100% in the customer's environment. So this view of the fax is coming right off that SharePoint. And to prove it, I'm going to come over here into the files section of the SharePoint. I've got this Momentum Facts folder, and we're breaking it apart by sent and received. And I'm going to sort by newer to older. And you see about a minute ago, I got a file. There's my file, right? So I'm pulling that right off that SharePoint. I could obviously open a browser, go to SharePoint, and retrieve that same file. So
I feel like you've seen some demos. I'm sorry to mean to interrupt, but I feel like you've seen some demos that are not legit, where you're like, and to prove it, let me show you where it comes from. It's like you've seen some vaporware demos. Is that where that comes from?
Well, it's not just that. It's a lot of times what you'll see is applications will say that we've built this to be a Teams I'm air quoting native app. And what you start to find out when you're in the app and you're pulling data is all it is it's a front end portal, and you're still accessing data off that third party application. You're not actually accessing it from your Microsoft environment. So that's why I'm stressing that SharePoint piece is you're not viewing the facts back from Momentum. You're not retrieving that fax from Momentum. You're retrieving it from your SharePoint. And the same is true when I send a fax. If I send that fax, it shares it, it saves it back in that sent folder on SharePoint. Again, when I retrieve it, I'm retrieving it from SharePoint, not through the portal back to Momentum. So you could call that piece kind of vaporware. It's just there's a big difference between how some apps function versus how we've purposely designed this application. And then from another compliance piece, when you're talking shared fax accounts, and I don't have another user that sent a fax in this one, so this isn't a great demo. But like if Mark was to log in to this account and send a fax, we're logging who's sending it, so that again, from a compliance perspective, let's say you need HIPAA compliance. Let's say I'm sending faxes and then Mark logs in and he sends a fax, but he happens to send it with HIPAA violation. You've got the audit process in place now to be able to catch that, and instead of trying to figure out who sent it, not about finger pointing, just about compliance. Like, oh, we know Mark sent this fax, so now we can go deal with it. Sorry, Mark, I'm not trying to pick
that's cool. And now that the PDF is in SharePoint, you can go and use Copilot's OCR recognition to see if credit card numbers were sent, and then flag that as a DLP issue. But you can also attach Teams fax with a physical fax machine, can't you?
Yeah, so we have lots of flexibility, and I don't know if I'm logged in. Again, this goes back to let me see if I'm logged in. This goes back to my struggle with my firmware updating on my other machine. Is I wanted to show the integration to Salesforce, where we can show that we use Power Automate to then push this off to a Salesforce CRM, or I guess we could go push it off now to the Mark Vail Mini CRM if we really wanted to. But then back to your point, Mark, yes, under the hood, we will also allow the synchronization of those traditional fax methodologies. So let's say I'm an organization that has a physical fax machine that's sitting in an office somewhere, and sometimes people just want to use that physical machine because it's easier, it's quicker. If they send it off that physical fax machine into our network, and we recognize that it's also a Teams fax, we can bring it back into the sent folder within SharePoint, log it, and store it. And again, it goes back to compliance, right? Now I've got a digital copy sitting in a compliant environment. And back to Mark's point, maybe it's attached to OCR capabilities, DLP, compliance tagging, where you can start to do some automated work to understand, oh, yep, we see this as a compliant document, or no, it's not, or, we need to go deal with it. So a very flexible platform, again, because we're pushing all of that tooling back up into Microsoft and leveraging the Power Platform to allow customers to reimagine what they do with their data.
Love it. Well, that's boy, we kind of got to the end of the show thing already. Our time is already kind of up, but there was a lot more to go through. We just didn't have time to get to it because we've got Brandon. We've got the big LinkedIn thing that you did that this week was the new call quality dashboards, and so we'd love to go over the call quality dashboards, next week or at a different episode. Mark Vale was going to go through the Qs app. It's currently in public preview. He was going to go through the Qs application. So we've got a lot more to show. We're going to do the texting. I was going to do the texting application. So there's a lot more to show that we just didn't get a chance to get to. But those three things, we're going to have to build a show specifically around the texting, the call quality dashboards, and the Qs app. So we'll do that maybe next week. We also have. What's pretty cool is we are working with a very large, how can I say this from an enterprise perspective? I can't use their name legally, so I'm not going to use their name. But if you think fun park and entertainment company, so a large fun park and entertainment company, they are a very large Teams organization. And we have the team that brought or that implemented that solution or implemented Teams into that organization, coming on a special 5-episode series, if you will, of Everything Teams Phone Live. Essentially, how they did it, right? The planning stages, the migration stages, the pothole stages, whatever it is, right? We're working through delivering a really interesting story of how a very large organization delivered hundreds of thousands of users. I think it's hundreds. I know it's all over 100,000. I think it's 160,000 or so users. So we have them coming on for a special series of Everything Teams Phone Live. So that's going to be very, very cool.
Yeah,
okay.
Taking the Mickey there, aren't you?
Yeah. The last plug I'll make is, the other big feature that's just recently dropped is the callback for call queues in Teams. That's a little harder one to demo, but I did a demo on LinkedIn, so maybe we can drop a link in the chat for people to reference. It's, I think it's going to complement the Qs app in a huge way. So yeah, let's make sure to get that. I'll make sure to get that link in the chat, and people can go check out that demo as well.
Okay, call quality dashboards, the call queue or the Q app, the callback features of the queues. And then was there something else? Texting, I think we had in there. Was what another thing? Something else was in there. We've got a lot to demo. The demo days, in fact, did turn out to be demo days, not demo day. So we'll have to V2 will have to be next week.
To be continued.
Everyone, that's it. To be continued. That's a wrap. Everything Teams Phone Live, episode 75, demo day live, so we can show different things. Thanks, special thanks to Mark Vale showing his new MPOP or MVCRM, was it the MV Mini CRM? That was exciting. The caller ID screen pops, so the businesses can use their data for great business purposes. And then for Satish coming on 30 minutes before his stage time over at Collab Days in Boston. He's doing a pitch on or a class or session on Copilot, but he came on and did a session with us about frontline workers, which there's quite a few of them out there. So thanks, everyone. Brandon, that's episode 75. Why don't you toss it out?
Yep. Appreciate Mark Vale and Satish and Bailey for everything you do. Thank you, everyone. See you next week.
See ya.